Now, some general thoughts on how to choose equipment. So we have these different standards available, different speeds, generations. I already made the point. I don't see much value in always having the latest and fastest. And why am I saying this? Because you are building networks for users. Users can have anything from the latest to something which is quite old. And what that looks like, what the distribution of technology among your users are, only you can determine this. You can, for example, do questionnaires. You can, if you're in a campus, you can ask staff and students. If it's staff, maybe it's actually you handing out equipment so you can actually determine what they're using. But if it's the students and visitors, well, they use whatever they're using. What you can always be certain of is that even the most modern mobile phone or tablet or laptop will be backwards compatible. You can use pretty old standards and still have modern equipment working on these networks, but not the other way around. If you limit your network to only offering the latest and greatest and fastest, then anybody on slower, older equipment will be locked out. So make sure that you're meeting the users' demands and that you match what they are having. Another aspect of this is whenever we're talking about building campus networks, I always get two questions. One is how fast I can make it. But number two is always how can I throttle it so that people don't use too much bandwidth. And the two are obviously sort of contradictory to one another. First, I want to make it fast. And then I'm saying, but please don't let them use it that fast. This means when you're providing end user speed, think about how you actually transport all the data that is now available to them at that speed. How do you actually then transport the data up or down from that point on? This, of course, depends on whether the bandwidth you're using is mostly external, meaning off campus. Are people downloading, viewing, fetching things from off campus or from within the campus? The high speed on campus might be brilliant to have if you're mostly connecting them to on-campus resources. But if it's content, if it's media that comes from outside, it doesn't make sense to offer more that you then can actually satisfy through your ISP connection, your uplink connection. How do you find out? Well, monitoring and management will tell you something about how your network's being used. Questionnaires can play an important role too. To be quite honest, even in places of science and education, we all know that a lot of the network usage is entertainment, is social networking, is general interest networking, and that's fine. Networks are made to be used, and just because somebody's watching video doesn't mean that it's not a good source of education to them. It might be a game of football or music too, but even that's fine. Networks are meant to be used. You just need to know what to expect. So in universities, I know there's often a huge chunk of it, which is YouTube, Facebook, and so forth. And it changes over time, of course. So it's good to know about that when you make the decisions about speeds you offer, capacity you offer. And the point, in short, is it doesn't make sense to offer gigabits of speed on the wireless if then you have a uplink of 10 megabits or 100 megabits. You can't satisfy the user then anyway. Your uplink would be saturated by just bringing on 10 or 20 users if they're using this end user bandwidth full. A general decision to take is whether to go for so-called enterprise level managed wireless equipment or kind of home user non-managed equipment. It all depends on what is the size of your network, what's your ambition level, and of course it all depends on money, on budgets. Managed networks are good for large networks. You have less manual work, monitoring, and services like rogue access point detection, channel management and stuff are typically inbuilt. The network controller takes care of that. Whereas on an unmanaged network, more suitable for small networks, 1 to 10 access points or so, you will have a lot of more manual work maintaining this. It will not manage these things by itself. You need to build some of the monitoring and management functionalities yourself. End of the day, it's a question of size, ambition, budget. For a campus network of any size worth mentioning, let's say, when you're reaching a few hundred users, thousands users, you are already in a class where you would want a managed network, really. Vendors, there are many in the enterprise class. Cisco, Extreme, formerly Aerohive, Ruckus, Fortinet, Aruba, Ubiquiti. There are more than that. Home small office, the names we meet most, TP-Link, Netgear, Linksys, Ingenious, Asus, and again, many, many more, different from country to country. Price is roughly, and here we mean price per access point. Enterprise class is typically somewhere in the thousands of dollars, and it goes down to just a few $10 for home equipment. So the span is quite big. If we have to make a recommendation, we would probably definitely say let's not go for the absolute cheapest, but it's probably also not worth going for the absolute most expensive. To some degree, you can help yourself with a do-it-yourself approach, building things yourself. However, it's become more limited how much actually makes sense to being done in a do-it-yourself way. Why is that? Well, the actual radios, the radio chips, the routers, the access points, you would probably have to buy them off the shelf, meaning a finished product anyway. You can, of course, build them yourself from a single board, little Linux computer, add a radio chip and stuff, but it's hardly worth it because the mainstream success of Wi-Fi has made finished off-the-shelf product by far the cheapest. It doesn't typically pay off to want to build that yourself. You're going to end up more expensive than buying an off-the-shelf product. It can still make sense, and we have a talk on that, building your own antennas. It can also make sense building your own software, for example, if you are not having a managed enterprise class wireless network, you can build part of the software needed, the management, the monitoring, the updating. You can build that yourself. So there is room for the do-it-yourself approach. However, it's less valid today, I would say, than it maybe was 20 years ago when the prices hadn't come down this much as they have today for off-the-shelf equipment.